Hi everybody, welcome to my first official episode of Quarantine Kitchen. Upon popular demand on my Instagram, I am going to go ahead and start making regular YouTube videos of our creations in the kitchen here during quarantine. Today is officially, I believe, day 18 that we are stuck in the apartment and we haven't stepped foot outside. And we've been doing our grocery shopping online, delivered to the door, so we haven't even gone to the grocery store. But what this has done, unfortunately, in addition to the shortages that are here in France, is that we are running out of a lot of basic ingredients. So what I've been doing over the last few days is showing you guys a little bit about what can be made in your kitchen with what you have left over. Ingredients you don't normally think would go together, but you can actually make a very tasty meal out of very little. So tonight, I'm going to be doing something a little bit more complex than what I've done in the past. But it is a mix of random things that were in the kitchen, and it's kind of a mix of luck and I think a little bit of what I normally have in my kitchen. So tonight we're going to be doing a variation of a black bean burger. Now, I've looked up this recipe online. You need to remember when you look up recipes online, just because you don't have that exact ingredient doesn't mean you can't do it. Just try to think logically about what you can substitute for it, if it's possible. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. And in the case of tonight, it is possible. The reason for this being the case is that I don't have black bean burgers. Black beans, but I have red beans, and we're going to use those instead. We'll see how it comes out. I have onions and garlic, which we always have in the fridge or in the cabinet. And then this is our last fresh vegetable. It was a yellow bell pepper that I've chopped up. We have some croutons that were pre-bought that we're going to be using as the bread addition to the burger. Of course, I have flour still in the cabinet, thankfully. Little cornstarch, and if you're like I am and you cook, then you have a lot of herbs that you buy once for a recipe, and then you never use it again. So I have like two things of spices, which comes really in handy these days when all we have is canned beans and vegetables. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit about how you can make this and still make a very tasty meal out of very little. So to start with the burger, you're going to drain your canned beans, which I've done already, and I put it here, and you're going to mash them up. And of course, my experience is if they're in a can already, they're pretty soft, so they're easy to mush up. And if you're having a tough time, and it depends, you can always use a blender, I guess, or a hand blender is usually what I prefer to use. But in this case, I think a fork will do just fine. So now you can see that we have the beans all mashed up. We're going to go ahead and add the chopped onion and put it in there. Now some people like to chop them up more. I probably could have done it a little bit more than I did, but that's okay. I minced the bell pepper, which I always normally have bell peppers in the fridge, so I'm glad I bought lots and lots during our last shopping trip. And then lastly, a little bit of garlic. Or a lot of garlic, depends on how you look at it. I love garlic, so I see this as a little bit. And then you're going to mix it all together. In the recipe that I pulled off online, they suggest to put some carrots in there. For one or two reasons, I'm not putting it in there. One, we don't have carrots, and that's the most important reason. But also two, I think even if I did, I wouldn't put it in there because if you've ever had a veggie burger, having chunks of carrots in there is not my favorite, but that's a personal preference. So, okay, now that you've got it all mixed up, this is the base kind of for your veggie burger. We're going to go ahead and now do a mix of different seasonings that is going to be later added to this. So we will shift to that now. In this recipe, they're calling for a tablespoon of cornstarch, which we have in the cabinet because we don't use it very often, so we don't go through it very quickly. So basically, what I've learned through this quarantine is that you may still have a lot of stuff in your cabinets, but may not necessarily be things you can eat for dinner. So, like for example, our entire top shelf of the fridge is condiments, tomato sauce, jam, barbecue sauce, and whatnot. Which is really good for a burger, but not good for making the burger. And then 1 teaspoon cumin. go. Finish it over there. And then they call for 3 tablespoons of a chili paste of some sort. So what this is your standard chili puree in the Chinese section at the grocery store here in France. So it's not particularly spicy, it's more salty, it's a flavorful addition. Because my husband Simon is not a huge fan of spice, I'm going to just do 2 scoops in there. But there's no particular one you have to use. So whatever you have in your fridge usually works fine. They suggest in the recipe that sriracha sauce is perfectly fine as well. Then they call for a tablespoon of warm water. I'm just going to eyeball that. Then a teaspoon of seafood seasoning such as Old Bay. In this case, I don't have that, but you guys may not have this at home if you're in Europe because it's not an ingredient that's easy to find. Thankfully, my family in the United States sent me this lovely thing. It's not seafood seasoning, but it's Creole seasoning. It comes from the south of the United States. It's spicy, but I don't really know how to explain it because there's nothing quite like it. So we're going to put a teaspoon of that. But I guess like to replace this, you could put a chili powder, no problem. You know, like I said, this can be adjusted to your market and like where you're living. So whatever type of seasoning you want to put in there will work just fine at the end of the day. Now we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon salt. There we go. Then a 1/4 teaspoon black pepper. Now I usually just eyeball this again because I like freshly ground pepper. And I usually put a little bit more than I think just because I like it. And now they're calling for 2 slices of whole wheat bread torn into small crumbs. We haven't had bread in a long time, just because I don't want to buy baguettes that are in the store because they're not wrapped in plastic and I'm concerned about germs. So we have croutons that were pre-made a while ago. I think once they cook in the burger, they should get nice and soft. So that'll be fine. Yeah, so now we're going to go ahead, before we add the croutons, we're going to whisk the seasoning all together and make a nice paste out of it. And then we're going, once you get this nice and mixed, we're going to go ahead and add this to the bean mixture that we did earlier. There we go. Perfect. Spatula. And it's, of course, the sauce that's going to bring all the flavor to that burger that you're making. And it's very important to mix it well, break up all the beans. Again, why it's important your beans are well mashed. It'll be easier to spread it out. It smells good. And now we're going to go ahead and pour the breadcrumbs in there. Again, these are dehydrated, and this is not what the recipe calls for, but I'm hoping mix them with the beans and then cooking in the oven, it will rehydrate the bread and give it the texture we're looking for. This is what I'm talking about when adapting the recipes you find online to match what you have in your cupboard. And remember, you don't always have to make things as complex as this. We're just lucky that we had a lot of this stuff still in the cabinets. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the mixture. And then now we're going to add a 3/4 cup flour slowly to this. So we'll do a quarter of the mixture at a time because you don't, otherwise it's going to get really dry and hard to mix, and you're going to have flour flying everywhere, so it's important to do a little bit at a time. And also, now they're calling for 3/4 cup, but you can stop before that if you feel like the texture of the mix is getting too dry. Because we have changed the recipe a little bit, so you have to always be aware that things may change a bit. A little bit more. And once we have this nicely mixed, we're going to put them into like chunks onto the baking sheet that I have here. I put baking paper on because you don't want it to stick. If you don't have baking paper, you can grease the pan as well with an oil or with spray or with butter. Any of that will do just fine. All right, so now you're going to see that is about the consistency we're looking for. There. See how it's drier than it was before, but it still spreads nicely. That's going to give you a nice texture to be able to make your patties. And those of you who are vegan out there, this is a 100% vegan recipe. Not on purpose, it's what we have, but all the better. There we go. Just a little bit up from here. It's also good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and make sure we're in times of coronavirus, so wash your hands well before you do this, of course, as I have. And you want to make burgers that are about, or lumps rather, we're going to call it, that are about 2.5 centimeters thick. You're going to place it on the baking sheet as such. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and flatten them out. This is not a perfect science, so if you don't do exactly that, that's perfectly fine as well. The point is to have something that resembles to a burger once you flatten it. And I will probably be doing a couple of these. And hopefully this comes out nice and tasty, which we can match with all those condiments we have in our fridge. There we go. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and flatten it with this. I think that's the easiest. That way you have something that resembles a burger. I'm going to add a little bit more to that one. Okay, there we go. I think we have ourselves our vegetarian patties, and we're going to go ahead and pop them in the oven. They are going to bake for approximately 10 minutes, because remember, this is, for those of you who are used to cooking regular meat, these are not meat, so they don't need to cook as long. The whole point of this is to heat them up and to bind them. And there we go. Okay, Google. Set timer for 10 minutes.
Sure, 10 minutes. And we're starting now.
So to do accompaniment with the burgers that we're making, we have a thing of canned green beans, and of course we have a quarantine essential. We have rice, so that's what we'll be serving with it tonight. So before quarantine, we never ate canned vegetables because we just don't like the taste of it, and well, yeah, that's the bottom line. But because that's where we are today, I've been trying to experiment different ways of how to cook this to make it tastier, and I'm going to just share with you some of my tips to make canned vegetables a little tastier. So, come over to the sink. The first and foremost, the most important thing is to, if you can open it. most important thing is to open your can, or jar in this case. Ah, there we go. Okay, once you open it, you're gonna drain them, because that water is, to me, the most disgusting part of canned vegetables. Make sure you get them all. Don't forget to recycle, kids. And then rinse them well. And what I've noticed with canned vegetables, which is expected, the tenderness of the vegetables gone. So these are very mushy very quickly. And that makes it all the more challenging to recook them. Is I have diced up some garlic and put it in some olive oil in a pan, which is how we are going to use it to cook today's green beans. Now, I let it get a little hot, so it's going to splatter a bit. And the importance of putting it in the skillet, you're going to be cooking with the garlic to give it that little taste, as well as drying out those juices that are in the green beans. For me, that is the part that I don't like about canned vegetables. So this is one way you can spice up that part of your dinner. They've been in there for about 12-13 minutes now. I decided to bake them a little bit longer. They look good. We'll see if they taste good. Now, don't worry, they look a little different, of course, than your regular black bean burgers, because we use something a little different. And you know what? Even if it's not perfect, I'll be happy to be eating this instead of a canned vegetables tonight by themselves. And then what we're going to do is we still have a bit more, so I'm going to put in round 2 of these burgers. And here is the final piece, what you can make with what's left over in your pantry. So I have decided to put Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, which I got from a food market here in Paris, to go with my red bean burgers. But as you know, you can put any of your favorite condiments with it, whatever's sitting in your fridge. And the moment of truth. Here we go. I can recommend this recipe. It's a good one.